Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are doing our final Mother's Day card. This one is actually from my mom, so I am featuring all Altenew things today. This I think is called the Gradient Stripes die, but I'm not entirely sure on that, but I do know it's Altenew. And I cut that out from some gray cardstock and some white HAMMERMILL cardstock, and I'm keeping the frame that's cut out of the gray, and then I took the stripes that came from the white, and I'm going to do some die cut inlay. Very simple. I wanted this to be a smooth, even surface. I'm putting it on a white card base, so it really wouldn't matter as far as like color, but I wanted it to be smooth all the way across. I'm using this Altenew stamp set that I failed to write down what it was called, but I will. Golden Days stamp set, and it has coordinating dies. And I am using my little triangle or corner ink cube holder. So we're going to go ahead and get going. So we have some HAMMERMILL cardstock. This is just A2 size panels, and I'm using my mini Misty to do all my stamping today. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp out this outline. There are a total of 4 layers to each of the flowers, and there's only one large bloom. And then there's 2 different kinds of leaves. One leaf has 2 layers, the other leaf has 3. And I am going to do kind of like a no-line color look. And y'all, I'm going to just give you a forewarning. I was very tired when I created this card. My 1-year-old, well, he's almost 1. He decided to kind of do a reversal of sleeping. And so I am very tired. I am stamping this in the lightest ink. That is my first mistake. I need to stamp this in my darkest ink. Like I said, I'm using all Altenew inks today, and I will go ahead and list all the inks below. But I'm stamping this in the pink pearl, and I should have stamped that in the Vineyard Berry. And when I go to stamp my next, like in the back of my mind when I was stamping this, I was like, you're doing this wrong. I was like, no, we're going to push through. We're going to push through, people. And I stamped the next layer on, and I was like, no, you did this wrong. So do as I say, not as I do, and be stamping your outline in your darkest ink. So in my case, that would be the Vineyard Berry. And I'm going to stamp this twice. I'm just going to flip my cardstock and stamp it again. And I'm going to do this on 2 panels. So I'm going to have a total of 4 flowers, which is good because I wanted 3 for the card layout I had in mind, but I missed stamp one of them. I think I was just putting too much pressure on, and so I got some ink where I didn't want it. So it worked out okay in the end. Here I'm discovering that I have the next color, which is the Coral Bliss. And this is at the point where I stamped this one that I'm like, no, you should have stamped this differently. One of the things that I am doing here is I'm taking a piece of just clear acetate and putting that in the corner, and I'm using that to help me see if I'm lining things up correctly. This stamp actually isn't very difficult to line up right, but I have other stamps that are a little more tricky. And so if you put a clear piece of acetate over and then line up your stamp and stamp it, you can see if you like the alignment. If you don't, you can always reposition and try it again until you're pleased with how it lines up. And then I just wipe that acetate clean, and I do that through every layer of all of these images I'm stamping today, just to make sure that or when I go to line up a new layer, I use that acetate just to make sure that I like how everything is lining up. And it's at this point I'm stamping this and I'm like, you should have used the darker ink. So I will correct that in just a minute. Here I've brought in that acetate, and I've actually brought in that outline image, and I lined that up again, and I'm going to stamp both of these at the same time. So I liked the alignment, and I'm going to stamp the outline in the Vineyard Berry, and then the next layer in the the Coral Bliss. This just makes sure that I line everything up correctly, and I'm showing you that I just store that acetate in the back of my mini Misty here, just so that the next time I'm trying to line something up, or I'm seeing if something's straight, whatever it is, I can make sure that I can use that acetate to help me ensure that things are where I want them to be. So here I am taking that Vineyard Berry, stamping the outline, and then the Coral Bliss, and stamping the next layer. I was discovering, and I don't know if that Coral Bliss ink pad is just dry, but I was getting a lot of like the texture of the ink pad in my stamping, and I didn't like that. So I was started to like swipe it across it, swipe the ink pad across the stamped image, and then come back and tap it. And I felt like I got better results that way. So that's maybe something to try. If you don't have re-inkers, like I don't have re-inkers for any of my mini ink cubes. I have re-inkers for my large ink pads, but not my mini ones. And so that's maybe something to try, you know, kind of brush the ink over it and then come back and tap and see if you get some cleaner results. Then I flip my cardstock and I repeat the process. And you're going to see when I stamp this one that this looks a whole lot better. And this is what I was wanting to have from the start. But lack of sleep made me do things incorrectly. At least that's what I'm blaming it on. So as you can see here, that looks a whole lot better. There's actually some like definition instead of it just looking kind of like a flower shape with no like defined petals. I repeated the acetate trick for this third layer. The third layer is stamped in Heartbeat ink from Altenew, and then that fourth layer, I am going to stamp that in the Vineyard Berry again. And I thought it wouldn't be enough depth, and so I was tempted or almost did some color theory here. So I have the one that I didn't stamp very good. I got ink kind of on the non like stamping surface, I guess you could say. And so I used that one as my test piece. I wasn't sure if double stamping this Vineyard Berry was going to give me enough definition. So that's one of the little tricks, I guess, a tip I have for you is if you don't have a whole lot of ink pads and you're trying to kind of build your stash, double stamp, triple stamp the same color, or do like a second generation stamping where you stamp it on a scrap piece of paper and then stamp it again on your project without re-inking it. These are ways to get more colors without having to have all of the ink cubes. Now, I like having all of the ink cubes. That's kind of where I like to spend my money and focus on my crafty stash. But if that's not you, if you have a very limited supply, maybe you're just new to this, that's one of the things that you can do is to double or triple stamp or do a second generation stamping. So here I was trying to see if I liked that Vineyard Berry. So I switched this over to the one that kind of had some ink where I didn't want it. And I have the frayed Forest Glades. So this is the second, this is like my mid-tone in the inks I'm using. So a little color theory for you. The complement to a color will give you a darker shade of a color. So in our situation, I wanted a darker red. Red's complement is green. So I used a mid-tone green to stamp it and give me another essentially like darker shade of red. I brought my daughter in and I was like, I liked them both and I wasn't sure which one I liked better. And so I brought her in and she was like, I like the other one better. So she likes that one better. So we're going to go with that one. So I didn't have to like waste time and restamp those again before I removed the stamp from my Misty. Moving on to the leaves, I learned my lesson. So we are stamping the outline of the leaves in the Hunter Green, which is my darkest color. And then I will go through all of the shades. So that kind of spindly looking one, the smaller one, that only has 2 layers. The larger one has 3. So I'm going to use, again, all Altenew inks. So the lightest color is Frayed Leaf, my mid-tone is Forest Glades, and my darkest is Hunter Green. And I felt for that larger one, I needed another tone. I needed another green. So I brought in some olive for that one. So we're just going to go through and stamp all those out, lining them up using that acetate sheet to get everything lined up. And then we're going to be able to put our Misty away because we will have all of the images we need. I actually did 3 panels of leaves, and I'm glad that I did because I ended up using all but 1. So that's one of my other tips is cut more leaves and greenery than you think you're going to need. because it gives you a much fuller and more interesting composition when you have sufficient leaves. The next part is I'm going to go through and die cut everything. So I'm going to die cut all of the leaves and the flowers, and I'm going to show you where I got my sentiment. I made 2 sentiments in my last video. This is the Simon Says stamp All About Mom, and I already heat embossed the Love You Mom. This is to my mom. In the Princess Gold embossing powder from Ranger using VERSAMARK ink. And I'm going to stack that up 3 total high just to give it a little more depth and a little more substantial feeling to it. And I'm going to take all of this to my die cut machine, the leaves and the flowers, and go ahead and cut those out. I am going to glue this sentiment together using some liquid glue just so I have a little bit of wiggle room to make sure I get everything lined up correctly. Now that I have all the parts cut out, it's ready to assemble. So I'm going to take the gray panel. I got this from Cardstock Warehouse. I'm not sure what color it is, but it is a very, very light gray. If you have the Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock, that would be a good option. You could even like do some ink blending with using Lost Shadow from Tim Holtz, either the Distress Oxide or the Distress ink. That would give you a similar color. And I'm going to inlay the white pieces that I saved to the inside of this. Like I said, I wanted it to be smooth. If I was not worried about it being like smooth and all on the same level, I wouldn't do this step because I have a white card base. But I wanted it to be all on the same level, so I'm just going to use some liquid glue and glue these together. I had a little section of this section here that kind of tore a little bit, so I tried to use my sand eraser to smooth that out. It wasn't working, so I'm just going to cover it up with a flower. But I'm going to take liquid glue and glue all of these little white sections in place so that it's smooth all the way across. I got my composition how I wanted it, and now I'm going to use a big piece of press and seal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this press and seal down on my flowers, and then I'm going to take the left-hand side of it and kind of burnish it down with my fingers onto my glass mat, and I'm going to create a hinge. I learned this from Kelly Taylor here on YouTube. She does this, and it is very helpful because now you don't have to pick up each individual piece all by itself. It's all one piece. And I'm going to carefully pick this up, and I'm going to apply glue, liquid glue, to the backs of all of these flowers, and then flip my hinge back over and glue them down to this card base I have. And I'm just going to press these all into place, and then I will carefully peel off that press and seal, and we will be done. We're going to then glue our sentiment in place. We're in that kind of open area right there, and then we are ready for some finishing touches. I did go and trim off some of that excess flowers that were hanging off the sides just to give it a more finished and complete look. And then I'm going to use liquid glue to glue that sentiment down flat. And then I went into my stash, and from Blingee Thingee on Etsy, I found some kind of deep red pearls that matched some of the colors in the flowers. And then I'm going to put some Spectrum Noir clear glitter brush pen all over the flowers. I didn't put any on the leaves, just on the flowers. And that will be it. So I thank you for spending time with me today. I appreciate it. And I hope you felt inspired to send your mom a handmade hug and paper hug. And we will see you next time. Bye.